Now, let's dive into chapters 17 to 19 of Steve Jobs. It's titled The Exile Awakens, Revenge Through Animation After Losing $1 billion. In the fall of 1985, the most dramatic palace coup in Silicon Valley history took place. Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, was ousted by John Sculley, the CEO he'd brought in himself, and the board of directors. Just imagine this genius who made the Macintosh computer speak at its launch, now walking out of the building with a cardboard box in his hands, his employee ID card revoked. He later described the feeling as like getting punched in the gut and being completely emptied out. But Jobs wasn't the type to hide and cry. He quickly sold all his Apple stocks except for one share, and founded Next Computer with a burning desire for revenge. His goal? To create a revolutionary educational mainframe and give Apple a big fat slap in the face. He gathered a top-notch team, spent a fortune on custom-made black magnesium alloy cases, and even had the internal screws gold-plated. What was the result? The cost per unit skyrocketed to $10,000. College presidents fainted at the price tag. By 1993, the Next factory shut down, hundreds of employees were laid off, and the money burned was like a mountain. Jobs later joked with a bitter smile, "I managed to turn myself from a billionaire into a pauper." Just as Next was on its last legs, fate played a joke. The Pixar animation studios he'd bought for $10 million years ago suddenly became his saving grace. But Pixar was in even worse shape at the time. Employees were huddled in a shabby office, barely surviving by selling 3D rendering software. In 1988, when the team begged for $300,000 to make the animated short tin toy, Jobs gritted his teeth and emptied his last bit of money. And what happened? The short won an Oscar. After the director thanked his family on the podium, the camera panned to the audience. Jobs was staring wide-eyed and clapping, thinking wildly, "Wait a minute, can this thing make money?" The Oscar glory attracted Disney, but the cooperation was a nightmare. Disney executives pointed at the Toy Story script and shouted, "Woody the cowboy is too mean. Buzz Lightyear is too stupid." They even halted the project at one point. The Pixar team was in tears, but Jobs was like a man on a mission. Revise it, but keep our soul intact. He mortgaged his house to raise money. During the day, he was a tyrant at Next, and at night, he'd sneak into the Pixar editing room and roar, "Woody's eyes need to have life. The audience has to believe that plastic toys have a heartbeat." This obsession eventually turned into a gold mine. In 1995, Toy Story hit the theaters and raked in $350 million globally. Kids in the theaters were screaming, "The toys are alive!" Meanwhile, Jobs was in the back, clutching the box office report so tightly that his knuckles turned white. On the day Pixar went public, his net worth soared by $1.2 billion. He was richer than he'd ever been at the peak of Apple. Even more ironic, the Disney CEO called to make peace overnight, and Hollywood, which had ignored him before, was now begging for cooperation. From a banished dog to the savior of an animation empire, Jobs' revenge story is full of dark humor. But when he smiled while holding the Pixar trophy, there was exhaustion in the corners of his eyes because the next computers were gathering dust in the corner. Then one day, an urgent call from Cupertino came in. As previously mentioned, Steve Jobs raked in a cool $1.2 billion from Pixar's IPO, creating a revenge myth in the animation world. But what did this Silicon Valley hotshot do first when he got back to his mansion? Stare at the butter in the fridge and frown. While his employees were chowing down on steaks at the celebration party, he was dumping a whole can of caviar into the trash, saying, "Corruption, grease will clog the soul." Who would have thought? This billionaire who brought toys to life lived like a hermit in private. When his daughter Lisa came over for dinner, she saw him spitting out the soup with a bit of cream floating on it, saying, "Scarcity is abundance. Self-discipline brings joy." The little girl rolled her eyes while munching on roasted chicken, thinking, "My dad can spend $100 million on a spaceship company without blinking, but thinks buying a new sofa is decadent?" Even more contradictory was his love life. His ex-girlfriend Tina wrote him a heart-wrenching email 25 years after their breakup, saying, "Remember that bridge in Paris in 1985? I said we should go live in France and grow grapes, but you just shook your head and laughed, saying, 'Who'd hire me with my temper?' Well, he'd rather be alone than change his sharp-tongued ways." But it was this stubbornness that gave Toy Story its soul. When a Disney executive pointed at Woody and said, "This cowboy is too mean," the team was in tears, but Jobs slammed the table and roared, "Change it, but keep the soul. Even plastic toys need a heartbeat." The best part was when he brainwashed the animators, saying, "Every product has a mission." Woody's anxiety? That's his desire to be a good leader. What happened then? When the movie came out in 1995, parents across the US were dragged by their kids to watch it 3 times. The box office raked in a whopping $350 million. At the celebration party, the Disney CEO raised a glass with a sycophantic smile, and Jobs sipped his vegetable juice and sneered, "Did you think you'd be calling me daddy today when you cancelled my project 10 years ago?" Now he's got a Pixar Oscar in one hand and Next's cutting-edge tech in the other. But he's still lost in thought during his late-night meditation. His employees noticed him repeatedly writing the same sentence, "Material things fill life, but not the soul." That quote comes from the Zen Buddhism he studied when he was young. Ironically, he just spent millions on a floating glass staircase for Pixar. His assistant quietly grumbled, "The boss keeps asking lately, am I a good person?" The answer might be in his daughter Lisa's diary. "He's a tyrant when he forces me to eat raw celery, but when he heard I did badly in math, He rushed to school and confronted the teacher, saying, "It's your fault if you can't teach the kids." When Toy Story DVDs filled supermarket shelves and Jobs' name was printed on kids' lunchboxes. On a rainy night, his next computer in the garage suddenly rang. Next chapter preview. Is Apple going bankrupt? Scully is begging his old enemy to come back. Will the tyrant who was kicked out years ago really save this sinking ship?